Welcome, welcome.
Come on in.
So excited to have everyone here today. As you're coming in, drop in the chat where you're coming from. We always love to hear where you're coming from. And then also answer this question for us. When you were a kid, what was the best TV show to watch and why was it your favorite? We are just, Hilton Head, that's awesome. Some Wisconsin, Kansas, New York, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Missouri. What's up, Texas? I'm in Texas. More Texas. All right, Jamaica. That's awesome. Yes.
Good. I love Lucy on there. That's good.
That's a really good one. Sesame Street. That's a great one too. Boone. Oh, I wonder if they're going to be at your school culture training, AJ.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, Aaron. I'll be in Boone next week, so might see you there.
Lots of Houston today. Some Missouri. Family Matters is a really good one. Dukes of Hazzard. Good throwback. Oh, the TGIF lineup for the 90s. Tara, I feel that really deep. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Rugrats. Got another Rugrats person.
Yeah, that's good.
Happy Days is a good one. Ooh, another Dukes of Hazzard. Oh, look, Aaron. This is your trainer for next week.
Love it, Aaron. I'm going to see you in a week. It's going to be great.
I love Lucy. That's a really good one. I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Who's the Boss? Growing Pains, Saved by the Bell, Monkey Brewster, Full House. Full House is a good one. I forgot about that one.
Love Full House. Quantum Leap.
That's awesome.
Nice.
What's his name? Who stars in Quantum Leap? Cheers. Home Improvement. Steve Urkel. Heck, yes.
All about the Steve Urkel.
Can you do a good impression of Steve Urkel from?
I feel like I need the whole get up to really pull it off.
I need my suspenders.
Yeah.
All right, Boy Meets World, people.
Yes.
AJ and I both said, yes, Scott Bakula, thank you. Both said Boy Meets World as well when we were just chatting. Gotta love some Corey and Topanga and Sean. Whole crew.
The whole crew. Mr. Feeney.
Oh, Feeney is the best. That was who I wanted to be as a teacher, was Mr. Feeney for sure.
Yeah. Definitely.
After coming in, continue to drop, when you were a kid, what was the best TV show to watch and why it was your favorite? But I want to go ahead and get us started. We have a lot of really awesome things to talk about today. So I'm going to introduce the two of us here that are getting to guide you today. So you are here for 5 low burden, high impact strategies for positive school culture change. My name is Meredith Lee. I am the Director of Professional Learning, and I'll let AJ introduce himself.
Thanks, Meredith. Hi, everyone. My name is AJ Hostak, Director of School Support, and really excited to be with you all today.
Yeah, we're super excited to talk to you today about school culture change. I just saw someone from Boone jump in. We actually are doing a school culture training in Boone. AJ is going to be the trainer for that one. Yep. But really, this has all kind of culminated from a lot of the work that we've been doing at Character Strong for a long time. You may have seen a similar webinar at some point if you've been following us for a while. But what we've done is we've taken all of our best ideas and put them into one training called our school culture training. So we're going to be kind of highlighting pieces of that today. You get to see just a glimpse of it, but it's actually a full day training that's in person, really interactive and really fun as well. So here are our objectives just for today. First and foremost, we're going to define culture and climate so that we can address all of the underlying components. We know that these two words are words that get used a lot in education, but for us to do anything meaningful with them, we have to make sure we all understand what they mean. Number 2, we're going to apply some low burden, high impact strategies for creating a school culture of well-being, belonging, and engagement. We know that oftentimes whenever we are doing anything in education, the personal and the professional blend together, and we have to find ways to make sure that belonging, engagement, and well-being are all part of what we do every day. And then finally, we're going to practice 5 components of a framework that builds engagement and belonging among a community of learning. So this is an instructional framework, but what's great about this framework is that it's not only great for classroom practice, but it's also great for whole building, whole district practice as well. So let's start with a really simple question. What is culture? What does that word mean? We often talk about how words are freighted with meaning. That word culture probably comes with a lot of meaning. So I want to do a quick thought experiment with all of you. So be ready to participate in the chat. I want you to take a moment and I want you just to picture in your head a tree. So picture in your head a tree. Now in the chat, what type of tree are you thinking of? What came to mind when you're thinking of a tree? So I see some willows, some weeping willows, maple, palm tree, pine, palmetto, big oak, birch. What about you, AJ? What was the tree that came to your mind?
Yeah, we got quite the forest of trees here. I'm loving it. I thought of a cedar tree. There was this big, massive cedar tree in our backyard when I was growing up, and my mind immediately went there.
Yeah, strangely, I'm in Texas and it's going to be 90 degrees here today, but I thought of a Christmas tree. Maybe it's me hoping for cooler weather. That was the first thing that popped into my head today. Pecan tree or pecan, whatever, however you pronounce it, we're okay with all of them. But the whole point of this is when we talk about things in education, sometimes we're using the same words to talk about very different things. So when we're talking about tree, some of us are talking about cedar trees, some of us are talking about Christmas trees, some of us are talking about sequoias or baobab trees. My guess is the same thing is true with school culture. It's one of those words that we sometimes assume means the same thing to all of us, but without some common language, some shared language, it's hard to have some shared understanding and shared success. It's like if we all got together and said, hey, let's go meet up for dinner, but never said we were going to meet up. We're all going to end up at a restaurant, but we're probably going to be eating alone because we didn't establish where we want to go first. So our goal is to make sure that when we're talking about culture, we're talking about the same kind of tree. So the way we usually define culture is we borrow a definition from James C. Hunter. He wrote the book, The Culture, so we feel pretty confident about his definition. He says this: culture goes much deeper than a mission statement. Culture is how group members actually behave repeatedly and habitually. I love that reminder that culture is not just a mission statement. It is people's behaviors in a space. And then we also love the reminder from Phil Boyd. He says that you either have a school culture by design or a school culture by default. In other words, there is no way of getting out of culture. Culture is going to happen because people's behaviors always happen. The only question is, are we going to be intentional about speaking to it, clarifying it, and teaching the skills required to bring the behaviors we want to life? And so sometimes culture and climate, like I said, get really lumped together. They get used together, but let's kind of tease them apart. So if culture is behavior, climate is the result of those behaviors. It's the environment's effect on its individuals. It's a feeling. So a lot of times you can feel climate right when you walk into a space. You experience climate just from the small things that happen, small behaviors that are happening all around you. Typically, as you move through a building, you also move through microclimates. Sometimes you're in spaces and you're like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. I know as an instructional coach, I had a really awesome opportunity to be in and out of a bunch of buildings a lot. And without even knowing certain spaces or certain teachers, I could walk into a classroom and be like, oh, the climate in this classroom is not feeling great. Sometimes we might avoid certain spaces because of those micro behaviors that people are experiencing. Typically in education, we don't quit the job, we quit people. We can quit behaviors that don't make us feel seen, safe, or supported. And if those behaviors aren't what we need, then we can leave. It's the same thing with students. Typically, our students don't quit school. They quit the way they feel at school. So how do we get more intentional about building a place that feels safe for students and staff? So if culture is behavior, the question is, how do we change behavior? It's such a complicated question. One that we do our best to answer using this. So this is the iceberg model. It's how we kind of wrap our heads around this concept of culture and behavior. So with the iceberg model, just like with the iceberg, at the very top is typically what we see, right? All we see are people's behaviors. But below the waterline, there's a whole lot more going on. So going down to the very bottom, we often have beliefs, right? What are the assumptions, the paradigms, or values that are holding that system in place? And then beliefs often inform structure. I know, I don't know about you, but how many of you have worked in a school building before where you're like, ooh, the person that built this does not work in education? Really fun fact, my high school was built by a former prison architect. So you can imagine how that building actually informed our behaviors. The structure of the building informed the behaviors of the people within it. So those structures also inform our behaviors, whether they're external, such as a building, or internal. We also have internal structures. That could also be things like building a master schedule, whatever that looks like there. Those structures often need to be supported by skills. So skills that are explicitly taught so people have the competencies to be able to do the things that we're asking them to do. So I want to give a just quick example of what this could potentially look like. So let's say that you're working in a school building, and this is the general belief. It's not my job to teach social emotional skills. I get it. We're very busy. There's so much going on. There's a lot of pressure, outside pressure to raise test scores. And so they're like, I don't have enough room on my plate to be able to support social emotional skills. But on top of that, let's say that there's also no dedicated time. There's no place in the master schedule to do it. There's no dedicated time that has been communicated with the staff. And then let's also say that because of that, students are lacking social skills. They're lacking coping skills, they're lacking emotional regulation, they're lacking conflict resolution. Those skills have not explicitly been taught to them. We cannot assume that they've been explicitly taught to them. So then what does the behaviors in the building end up looking like? What does the culture look like? It may be a culture of high anxiety, of high negativity. There may be some power struggling happening between students and staff, or even staff to staff or staff to administration. But all of that, all those behaviors underneath that is so much more. We have to really realize how much more is going on. Science tells us if we want to have the most leverage, that we actually need to start with behaviors. That's where we're going to get the most leverage to actually changing people's behaviors. So we talked about the iceberg model, but how do we impact behavior? So we're going to talk about behaviors that we have identified that can help school culture change. Those are all wrapped up into this thing we call the SERVE model, or the SERVE instructional framework. So these are adult behaviors that we can have that help support students and staff with low burden, high impact strategies that are research backed. We use the term serve because we know that students are often serving themselves. We as educators are often serving our students, our communities. And then if you're in an administrative role, you're often serving staff. So we like that concept of serve. So here is what we're going to do. We're going to break apart this a little bit more. We're going to go one by one through each of these pieces of the acronym and talk about one strategy that's really low burden, high impact that can impact the whole school culture. So I'm going to pass it to AJ.
Thanks, Meredith. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to put in the chat. We'll definitely get to those at some point throughout our presentation today. But really looking back at this SERVE model, let's start with that S, and it happens to be start. And it's a warm welcome followed by a routine start. So we'll really get into what that behavior looks like. And to start, we want to think about how our beliefs drive our behavior. When I think about what I eat every day, I like to eat an apple every single day because I like apples and I believe it's healthy for me. And so that really drives my behavior in how I consume that food. Rather than eating a cookie every day, even though I may want to, I really focus on eating an apple every day. So our beliefs drive our behavior. And a belief at Character Strong is that we believe in systems over goals. We believe that we cannot just put all of our effort into goals because our goals may not get us to a point where we need to be. We want to make sure that we have systems over goals because the work that we're doing is hard. And that no one should really be saying otherwise within that. The work that we're doing in education can be challenging, and we also find ourselves often reacting to things. And that's not really setting us up for success. We want to be proactive within that. We want to make sure that we are filling our cups rather than depleting our cups. And we believe that if you have systems in that practice, then you are able to achieve the things that we want to do rather than just focusing on goals. And so within that, we think about this example of our students coming into school and how they could be coming with lots of issues, things that we don't necessarily know about. we think about this example where students are, covered in lighter fluid, and there's a lot of matches in school that could possibly set them aflame. This could be an interaction with an educator. It could be an interaction with a student. It could be walking in a crowded hallway. It could be, arriving late to school. It could be an empty stomach. Whatever these things may be, they can really get certain students, fired up in a certain way. And so we really want to be intentional on how we can combat this issue of students who are covered in lighter fluid. We don't want them to have any matches that cause them to be aflame. So we really want to establish neutralizing routines. And what the neutralizing routines do is it really helps our brains find a calming state, something that we can depend on. If we look at this example, we have a brain of someone who has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, versus a brain that doesn't. And you can see the two differences here, in that one brain is much calmer, it's less activated. And that's really where you're preventing those matches from setting a student aflame. And so we really want to be focusing on those neutralizing routines. And that's ultimately what we get out of the START practice. And what I love about this here is this practice of relational entry tasks, so that when students are coming into our classrooms or coming into our schools, we can have a routine, something that is neutral for us, a habit set aside, so that our brain can be calm. It could be something that we expect, something that we can depend on. And so within these relational entry tasks, we have great examples in our Character Strong gym. We have a full library of them for grades K through 12 of different ways on when students come into the classroom. Before we get into our academic work, knowing that our academic work is important, we're going to engage relationally. It's going to be one of the first things that we do so that the students can feel calm, can feel better. It's actually what we did with our training today, with our presentation today. We had a relational task as we came in, asking about our favorite shows. And so we'll go ahead and do another one right now as another example. So if you would, think about what is your favorite part of the day, and give us a reason why that is your favorite part of the day. Go ahead and put that in the chat. You can use the actual sentence here to fill in the blanks. This is an example of a fill in the blank relational prompt. And then we'll talk about it.
Going home because I get to see my kids, spend time with my family. What about you, AJ? How would you fill out this prompt?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think about the end of the workday, and it's not because the work is over. There tends to be more work to be done, but it's an opportunity for me to take my dog to the dog park. And we actually go to this like elementary field that we are able to visit with other dog parents. And it's this very eclectic group of multi-generational dog parents, and our dogs just love to play together. And it's something I look forward to every day. How about you, Meredith?
Mine is going to pick up my son from daycare, seeing his face light up. My son is 1 year old. And so seeing his face light up when he sees me is like the best moment of my day. It's like nothing else matters at that moment, but he's just so excited to see me. So much great stuff coming in the chat. Writing in a journal to start a positive tone. Journal writing is really powerful. Research behind how powerful it is for everyone, no matter what you're going with. Anytime you see your 9-month-old twins, so excited.
And I think some of these parts of the day, they're not always the same time, right? A lot of people talk about journaling or meditation. A lot of those practices you can do throughout the day. And so I love that it's not just fixed on this set time. You can really do it throughout.
Oh, I love that, Kevin. 4 p.m. as I celebrate the successes and plan to address the challenges, which is kind of reminds me of what you said about the end of the day. Like, it's not that the work is done. It's just that you feel accomplished for what you have done. And then, you just keep at it.
So true.
Awesome. Ready to keep moving?
Yeah. Thank you all for sharing. That was really great to see. Another relational entry task that we have is something that we call the temperature check. And it's a great, weekly practice is how I personally use it, where you can have students fill out, online form, or you could have them, write it down. But really what you have is two required questions. They share their name, and then on a scale of 1 to 5, how are they doing today? And then an optional question would be why. And so what you get out of this is a great temperature check of how students are feeling on any given day. And you can get a wide range of answers, obviously. Some are up 4 or 5, but you will oftentimes get students that may be like in the 1, 2 range. And it's always great to have that optional why so you can learn more about it. I taught 5th grade students last year, and I had a 5th grade student that listed the number 2 and simply said, "I'm tired." So I was able to engage with that student after class and, ask more about her response. And, she said, "Yeah, it's not the class, it's just the time of day. I'm always tired at this time of day." And I asked, "Well, how do you usually, work? Do you like take a nap? Do you do like other things?" She said, "Yeah, I usually like go outside and kind of get some fresh air." And so within that class, I usually reserve the last bit of time to like allow the students to go outside and get fresh air. And I decided to move that to earlier in the class period as a way to help this student, not feel as tired. And as we continue the temperature checks the rest of the school year, that student no longer listed "I'm tired" as a reason for having a low number, and the numbers started to come up. And so I think it's this great example on how temperature checks is how we can really get feedback from our students to really see how they are doing. Because sometimes we don't always get those responses, verbally in person. Sometimes it's helpful to write it out, to document it.
Yeah, I love the entry task, and not only with students, but also with staff. I know at Character Strong, we actually do a temperature check every single Friday. Our senior leadership sends out a survey asking us how we're feeling. And if we report a 3 or lower, someone checks in with us, which is really cool. I know I've given a 2 before, and really quickly after, I had someone check in with me and see how they could support me. So it's a really great opportunity across the board. I know that we've like presented this to staff before, and one time someone was like, "Well, what if like every staff member starts doing this, and kids are getting asked all the time, like, how are you doing? How are you doing?" And we were like, is that such a bad problem to have, that kids are getting asked too much? Like, oh my gosh, all my teachers are asking me how I'm doing. What the heck? Like, not a too bad of a problem. Yeah, now that is ideal for sure. So let's come back to serve. So that was the S in serve, start. So the next one is engage. So engage is consistent practices to engage relationally. A belief that we have at Character Strong is that connection doesn't happen on accident. We have to plan for it. We as humans are built to connect, but we are more socially isolated than ever before. In the absence of systems, we cross our fingers and hope that connection is always going to happen. But this is what has happened instead. 73% of Generation Z sometimes or always feels alone. This is an epidemic of its own. Did you know that I think it's like 1 in 2 adults report that they are lonely? And loneliness is as bad for your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. You will die sooner from loneliness than you will from smoking. It's really intense for us to think about this. Here's something even worse. Half of lonely young people reported that no one in the past few weeks had taken time to ask how they're doing. So if we're asking our students with temperature checks and too many people are asking it, that's not a bad problem to have. That's a good problem to have. I know I was an English teacher, and we often did expressive writing pieces. We wrote poems. They get to write in a journal, whatever that looked like. And I cannot tell you how often students that I would not expect would write about how lonely they were feeling. It could be students that looked like they were doing really well on the outside, or students that seemed like they had a lot of friends, but their loneliness was not being recognized because no one was asking them. So we have to set up systems in order to make sure that students and staff have opportunities to connect to each other. So how do we build these consistent practices to engage relationally? Here are 2 really simple but really powerful strategies that can be used at both the classroom, building, and a whole district level. It is just a primary partner and a core 4. So a primary partner is one person that you can consistently meet with over a course of a week, a semester, or a year. In a classroom, it might be a pair of students that know that they always will turn and talk to each other, or anytime you have an activity, they know they can always go to each other. It really ensures that no student is ever left out. At a building level, this might just be a check-in or accountability partner. What if every week you gave a suggestion to check in with that partner? Be like, hey, what are you grateful for this week? Or, hey, just go by and give your partner a high five and tell them one thing that you appreciate about them. How might that increase belonging among staff at your school, which often trickles down to belonging for students? Research shows that the more satisfied a staff is in their job, the better student learning outcomes are. The other practice is core four. So that's just a group of four that can also consistently meet. Same thing. It could be you have a core four for one meeting. It could be you have a core four for a semester or core four for a whole year. We recognize that sometimes discussions are best had with small groups instead of a one-on-one. So core four is often two primary partnerships that come together, which really ensures that that psychological safety is there because it's two people that already feel pretty comfortable with each other that now are joining together, and they have some of those cadences that are often great to have in a relationship. At the classroom level, this might just be a table group, or it could be for one grading period, this is your partner group for any of the group work that we ask you to do. At the building level, this might be your team at staff meetings. At the secondary level, I know one thing that's really beneficial is having cross-departmental teams that actually can meet and wrap around students. So for example, in middle school, you often share students across different departments, and you can meet and talk about those students together. How can we better support Jose? Jose seems to be struggling. Or, hey, I noticed, or one teacher can tell another teacher, hey, I noticed that Hannah did a really good job in her math quiz. Will you celebrate her in your class? How powerful could that be? So these two are really extremely simple, but extremely important structures that we can introduce to make sure people are connecting on a regular basis and have that sense of community that we know keeps people in a building. So I'm going to pass it on, go back to serve.
Yeah. And so as we return to serve, we really get into our, next piece of the serve model, and that is respond. And when we respond, we think about empathetic tools to respond to people's needs. So it's really responding with empathy in our practices and, in this case, with our behavior. And so we return to another character strong belief that behavior is communication. We believe that students and really people are communicating all the time through behavior. And unfortunately, many of us are unskilled in how we communicate through our behavior. It's why, we can have lots of challenges when interpreting other people's behaviors, a lot of struggle with it. And sometimes our responses to those behaviors are not ideal for the specific students, for the specific individual. And so we really want this to really challenge our paradigms on how we, support students that, we might think like, gosh, what is wrong with that student? Instead, think about, well, what's happening with that student? And really thinking about how their behavior is that communication. So we return to the iceberg model, as a reminder of how behavior is at the top. Behavior is what we are communicating out, but we still have those skills, structures, and beliefs beneath the surface. And so another example of this is, if we look at a student and let's say they have a belief of I'm not smart and won't amount to anything. That's something that they believe, and that could be influenced by many other factors. And so as the student comes in with that belief, they also, have certain structures that play into that, whether it's because they are living in poverty, maybe they have dyslexia, any sort of learning challenges. And, within this, it could be labeled at risk. And I think this is another comment on structures in school systems that may be speaking to the well-intentions of labeling students of at risk, but also knowing what that may do for our students as well. And so thinking about the skills that may be applied here is that there could be reading strategies and focus strategies on what the student needs because of all of this. And that's where we're really going to target our intervention for the student. And yet we ultimately get behaviors that when it's time to read, a book is thrown across the room. And if we just look at that behavior by itself, it can feel very jarring. It might result in, dismissing a student out of the class for a behavior like that. When in actuality, if we go beneath the surface, if we look at that belief system, we realize that there is a lot more to it, and that the last thing that we should be doing is giving that student, detention or in-school suspension or anything like that. And so that extra reminder that we have leverage the further we go down. So we really want to be focusing on those beliefs for our students and for each other. This brings us back to this like excellent reminder that we have to find ways to break out of the conflict cycle. If we have our students in our classroom, and we're just constantly in conflict with them, we're just going to be spinning in circles. It's not going to be going anywhere. And so our chief development officer, Dr. Clay Cook, has this great vision that every classroom should have a stop sign in the back of the classroom. And that'll be this visual reminder for the educator that anytime there's an interaction going on with a student, there's a conflict cycle about to happen, to simply stop, pause, take a breath, and think about how we can engage. How can we respond with empathy in this specific example? And so imagine if we were, in our classrooms, or maybe in our offices, or if we're in our own homes, and in our kitchen, or whatever, we have that stop sign as a visual reminder on how we can respond with empathy, knowing that these conflict cycles happen in many interactions, and the only way to break it is to have that response with empathy. And so one of these tools that we can really speak to here is something called proximity control. And as we go over some examples in relation to proximity control, I think we'll see how we can really redirect student behaviors in empathetic ways. And really what it comes down to is teaching like the floor is on fire. If we are able to, move around the space and become more proximal to certain students that need redirecting behaviors, that is responding with empathy. That is a better opportunity for the student to have, some chance to redirect their, specific behavior, rather than, jumping on them, if you will, communicating from across the room, yelling stop, or, anything like that. And so just being closer to people is a great way to respond with empathy. And one way to, work on this skill is something called proximity mapping. And what I love about this is, all you need is, a fellow colleague, an administrator, an instructional coach to come into your classroom in this example and have them trace your movement around the classroom. And then you're able to really see how this could apply in your own example. And so if we go to the next slide here, we'll even see how this could look. So if the purple lines is the movement of the educator in the classroom, we have the dots here representing our students, and green dots are students who are engaged, who are communicating positive behavior from the educator's perspective, and then our red dots are our students that might be challenging, our students that are disengaged. And I think we can see this clear, example that the students that we are closest to are going to be those green dots for us. And while the students that are farther away from us, we have the red dots. This example really models my second year in teaching, when I taught a senior seminar course. And it was open seating. That was probably mistake number one for me. And the students in the back corner of the classroom that are fully red had the most challenges, and I had the most stress about dealing with those students. And yet, if I move seats around, or I actually moved myself around because of this proximity mapping, there would be a higher likelihood that those students would have been more engaged, and I would have had less struggles with them. I think we can do this in our classrooms, but we can also do this like as administrators or outside the classroom. And so you can even look at your whole building plan and really chart your own path throughout the school, and see where we are engaging, and how there's so many blank spaces throughout. And I think we can look at this example from an administrator perspective. We can also look at it from a student perspective. If we were to track our students going through our buildings, where are they ending up in the hallways? What rooms are they gravitating towards? And that can help us with this practice. And what I love about proximity mapping and proximity control is that we ultimately have control over that movement for us. It's something that we can really zero in on. And it's this great reminder that we have with this practice alone, over 50% of incidents of student behavior can get back on track. And so if we simply get closer to a student whenever there's a moment that needs to be redirected, 50% of the time that's going to work. And so I really encourage us to do this practice, whether it's a proximity mapping to start or whether it's just proximity control, to see what results may come.
Yeah, I love proximity mapping. I use it all the time as an instructional coach. And I actually had it done to me first, and I had not even realized I was avoiding certain parts of the room. And then when I had an opportunity to reflect on it, I was like, I'm avoiding that part of the room because I get uncomfortable sometimes when that student pushes back. But I needed to see that because it meant that I was not making connections with that student. It was just making the problem worse and worse. And so proximity mapping is so powerful to take it no matter what you're doing. A lot of times they use it in like speech and debate as well with some people like students. They teach them, or in theater. It's just a really great strategy. So let's go back to serve, and we're going to move on to the V, which is value. Strategies that clarify why our learning has value. So what we believe at Character Strong is that purpose fuels persistence. I know a lot of times at Character Strong, we are largely a curriculum company. And one of the most annoying statistics that I know is that it usually takes, on average, 3 to 5 years for something to become normal on a campus. That seems like a lot of time, and it can sound really frustrating. But if you are doing really hard work, really meaningful change, it's gonna take some time. But how do you make sure that you have the persistence to fuel through that? It really is that purpose. Otherwise, if we don't make sure we establish that purpose and are clear on that purpose and revisit that purpose, it's going to be another one of those things that it's like, this too shall pass. How often have we been in education where we see something come in and out really quickly? And the thing is that our students see the same thing. This too shall pass. I will get past this math class. I will get past this lesson. I don't know about you, but how many of your students have ever asked this question? Why are we even learning this? I know I got asked this a lot as an English teacher, especially when we were doing Shakespeare. And it is the best question to dig into because we really have to cultivate that purpose in students. They need to connect their learning to themselves and the people they care about, especially recently. So this is Dr. Duckworth. She runs the Character Lab, and this has shown to manifest in her research that students need a deeper why. Purpose fuels persistence. What about our students? I know a lot of educators I've talked to say something along the lines is our students appear more apathetic than ever before when it comes to schoolwork. Students now have access to many things that compete to their attention. They really, really need to understand why we need their attention. It's no longer of just because we are the teacher. They have more power now. They have access to social media where they have a bigger voice. They need to understand why this is important to them. One of my favorite statistics, since I already told you a really depressing statistic, I'll tell you a happier one, is that if students have at least one teacher who makes them excited about their learning, they are 30 times more likely to be engaged in school. 30 times, one teacher. Can you imagine if all of the teachers are able to do that? So we want to introduce this really simple practice. We know questioning strategies are extremely important when it comes to education. So we want to simplify it even more. If every single lesson, every single class, every single activity, we can connect it back to the me, the personal, and the we, the interpersonal, then we are much more likely to engage students and to connect them and connect their learning to what matters to them. So here are some examples of the personal, right? So what did you notice? It's one of my favorite questions. I asked it every day in class as an English teacher. It's a great bottom line analytical question. It really says what you notice is important. It doesn't matter what I notice, it's what you notice. What resonated with you? How is this relevant to your life? And then why does this matter to you? Obviously, you can tweak these questions to make them best fit your environment, but it's a great way to get them to connect what they're learning to themselves. And so I want to try it out with all of you. So far today in this webinar, what has resonated with you? So in the chat so far, what has resonated with you? I'm going to go and play some music. We'll answer that. And AJ, I just want to know, I know that this content is familiar to you, but is there something that's resonating with you today that maybe hasn't resonated with you before?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think those connections, I always think about how we can have like an accountability partner. I'd always think about like a core four of like another group to come back to with consistency. I think it is so powerful to, expand our connections and make that consistent. So that's really what's standing out to me today.
I love it. I love even thinking about core four as being an extension of accountability and checking
Yeah.
in as well. There's so many good things coming on. Connection doesn't happen on accident. Systems are important. My brain is running 1,000,000 miles an hour. I love it, Catherine. That's usually, that's a good sign. Really tangible actions to change behavior. Students need a deeper why. The iceberg is always a really great thing to hold on to. Temperature checks, serve in general, creating psychological safety with routines, going back to those neutralizing routines, just the simplicity of it all. That was our goal, is we were like, we want this to be super simple. The more complex something is, the less likely people are to actually implement it. The more simple it is, the better. Proximity mapping, yeah, best thing as an instructional coach that I learned how to do. 30 times more likely to learn with one teacher is amazing, right? That's the coolest statistic ever. There's so many statistics we get in education that are really depressing, but then you see something like that and you're like, wow, helping teachers break free of the conflict cycle, checking in with students. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. So now that we talked about the personal, right? The personal, we need to talk about the interpersonal. So how this is related to the people around us, to our cultures, to our communities, to our environments. So some other things that you might look at is, what other perspectives did you notice? It's really important for us to do some perspective seeking. We're really bad at guessing other people's perspectives, but perspective seeking is really important. It's a really important part of bridging, really important part of creating belonging. What might this mean to your blank, right? Let students fill in the blank, or you might fill in the blank depending on what lesson it is. Maybe for a science lesson, what might this mean to your health? What might this mean to your future? How is this related to blank? How is this related to your family? How is this related to your friends? How is this related to your peer group? How is this related to your experience at school? And why might this matter to people you care about? And so finally, let's have you talk in the chat. Everything we've talked about today, why might this matter to the people that you care about? And you can choose who those people are, but why might this matter to the people you care about? Go ahead and draw something in the chat. I know for me, for the people I care about, I have a 1-year-old son, and I want him to be in schools that are implementing these things. I'm really lucky that he's in a daycare that does some things that are very similar to this, but it really matters for his health later on. I want to be a role model, need intentionally daily reminders to connect, positive relationships. Students can change the course of a day. Some really small things can change the course of a day, and sometimes a life, really. Yeah. I wish my high school son felt connected to his learning in his high school community. There's research that says, like, as a junior, only 3 out of 10 students feel like they're engaged in school. Just low. Power struggles. Barely got through school because he wasn't engaged. He's very intelligent. My brother was the same way. He also was bullied. He barely got through school. He didn't have a sense of connection. He didn't have a sense of belonging. He didn't have engagement. None of those things were there for him. It was very hard. So how do we create better environments?
And I think within all this, Meredith, it's important reminders that, we can make great strides, if you will, individually, but how important this is to be part of the school culture, so that it doesn't rest on just one individual teacher or one, specific student friend, but we really have it embedded as an entire school community, so that all students feel welcome, engaged, and belonging.
I love that. What a great reflection about how important this work is at the community level and at the school culture level. Not just one person, it's all of us working together.
So as we return to serve, we, are wrapping things up with, our final part of serve. And it's really going to be that final E, that exit for us. And it's a reflection to solidify learning and exit with action. I think some of us think about it as like exit tickets, and different ways on how to conclude a class and make sure that our students have fully engaged in their learning. And I think we'll offer some great examples for this as well. But to begin, let's have another character strong belief that you don't have to be bad to get better. And I think, as we go through the chat and many of us are reflecting like this is so much information, like how do I do it all? I think that's an excellent reminder of, maybe it's just one thing that we can do moving forward after today. But also that we can do improvements on things that we are already doing well. So in no way, if you're not practicing proximity mapping or, responding with empathy, that's okay. You're probably doing good things, but here are just some other options on ways to improve. And I think Maya Angelou reflects on this very well with this quote: do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And I love this reflection. It's something that I practiced recently with my mom. I texted her a couple months ago and I said, hey, how can I be a better son to you? And very simply, she said, check in with me more. And that's all I needed to hear. I now have like a regular check-in with my mom. She is a recent call on my recent phone list, which she hadn't been before. And I wouldn't have known that unless I, engaged with that feedback. So know that you can always ask, like, how can I be better? Doesn't mean you're doing bad, but we always have room for improvement. And I think this is a great, reminder for us as well, is that, students' views about teaching quality make a substantial difference in effective teaching. I think if we just sit with that for a moment, that really puts into perspective that how we show up to our work, whether that is teaching in the classroom or engaging in school communities and school systems, it's important for us to engage with that student feedback piece. It's important for us to improve our school culture and have that reminder that we need to be improving so that we can be, supporting our students and helping with their engagement in their school classroom, in their school community, so that we can make it not only a welcoming place, but a place that they want to be every single day. And so I kind of referenced it earlier, but as we think about a way to exit, one option we offer here is called the one thing. And it's really just engaging with students in that feedback piece and how we can take one thing from this, how we can improve one thing about this. And so we'll offer a couple different examples here in a moment, but one of my favorite practices with an exit is something that I've done in the past that we call 1 to 10. And it's a simple feedback form, as you see here, where you list a statement. I'm committed to being the best teacher, the best leader, the best parent I could be, whatever you want to fill in the blank with. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I doing? And then what is one way I could be better? So even if they list a 10, like, hey, you're doing great, what is one way I can be better, knowing that there's always room for improvement? I personally do this at least once a year. I've done it with my classes before with my students. I do it with a staff that I direct throughout the year. I've done it in like individual relationships as well. And something that I learned recently on this topic was that an individual cannot tell the difference between my sarcasm and my gratitude. Two very different things that should not be confused, that should not be challenging to interpret. And yet that was hard for this individual. And so that's something that I've been, intentionally practicing on since then. I've been really focusing on showing gratitude more intentionally and not making sure it's ever, misconstrued as sarcasm. And I would not have known that specific piece of feedback without implementing this practice. So I think this is a great tool to use, a great reflection to have. And something that we'll continue with today is going back to that one thing. So we have this initial question here. What is one word you would use to describe this webinar? If you could populate the chat with that response, we'd love to know what is one word that's come into your mind that would describe this webinar for you. And I'm already loving it. We're getting a lot of like helpful, inspiring, engagement, informative, a lot of I words when this comes up, which is so wonderful. Good overlap, change, and grounding. Meredith, is there a word that you would describe this webinar?
Yeah, I think it is reminder is the word. I think a lot of us already know many of these things, but reminders are so important about the tools that many of us already have. Like, for example, proximity control is something that I know I knew really well coming out of school, like as teacher school, and then I slowly forgot it and maybe got a little lazy. And so it's just good reminders. Jennifer. My girl.
Look at that. That's good. Yeah, I saw simple on here, practical. Very good list here. I love it. Thank you all for sharing. Another question that we can rephrase with here is something that we're very intentional with as well. We are always seeking improvement at Character Strong. We operate on a continuous improvement model with all of our products, with all of our trainings, and we believe that's the only way that we can be better. So we specifically asked this question: what is one thing that would have improved your experience today? It could be slowing down, it could be having more examples, whatever comes to mind. We'd love for you to share it in the chat. What is one thing that would have improved your experience today?
A little slower with the slides. Great feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
Slides. Have slides so during the training.
Really something you can follow along with. That's good.
We could fly there.
We'd love to come to your living room, your office, your classroom.
How to take this and implement it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
A little longer so we can chat. Oh, Lisa, I love that idea. Lisa is one of our trainers as well. Did you know that?
There you go. Yeah, I think the pushback from students, Jen, that's always a great question, right? I think we envision this, all these examples, we envision it going perfectly. And I think it's an important reminder, speaking on behalf of Meredith and I, when we've implemented these, they don't always work the first time or the 13th time. It is something that, can take practice. It's also something that oftentimes we're just gathering information about and ways that we can influence changes in the future.
Ready for the last one?
Yeah. So our final question here is, what is one thing you are going to do next to impact school culture? So thinking about your specific role in, your school system, whatever that may be, what is one thing you are going to do next to impact that school culture?
Yeah, I think about this. Share information with the staff. Take one or two of the strategies and implement it next year. That's all you can do, right? You might get all observed, but you might only implement the S, and then you might move on to the E, right? School families that meet one day a week. Oh, that's awesome.
I think so. Yeah, some of you have referenced taking notes and sharing with others. That's so important.
Power my campus with knowledge of START. Great. Sometimes knowledge is just all that people need. Sometimes they need some more things as well. We look at the iceberg model when we label quote unquote difficult students.
Such a great reminder.
And school leadership. Importance of connection. Again, it's a great reminder as well, right? A lot of times we need to be reminded, or do we need to be taught?
And I love how you can see these all connecting, right? With our one word at the very beginning to describe the webinar is even connecting to how we're going to impact our school culture. So that was really wonderful. So as we wrap up today, I think ultimately that final reminder of our serve practice, that's really what we focus on today, to provide those 5 low burden, high impact strategies. And as we think about culture, a reminder that it's behavior. I think if we remember that, that's going to really tie us back into our iceberg model, knowing that behavior is on the surface, right? And yet we always need to remind ourselves that we need to reflect on what's beneath the surface and really understand that a lot of it starts with beliefs. There's more leverage down there. And then we can start to influence our structures, our skills, and then ultimately change that behavior. So our beliefs drive our behavior, right? I eat an apple every day because I believe it makes me healthy. So what are some of those, behaviors that you can start to do? And one of my favorite sayings about being an educator comes from Todd Whitaker. And he says that the best thing about being a teacher is that it matters. And also the hardest part about being a teacher is that it matters every single day. I think that really just sums everything up so perfectly well, that really we need to be intentional in how we are welcoming students into our school community. We need to be intentional in how we are building those relationships. We need to be intentional about finding those empathetic ways to respond to all sorts of different behaviors, reminding that behavior is communication, and then find those connections to create learning as a purpose for our students. And then also having those daily opportunities, those various opportunities to reflect and, improve moving forward. This is, one of our favorite credos at Character Strong, the Stonecutters motto by Jacob Riis. And it reads like this: look at a stonecutter hammering away at their rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two. And I know it was not the last blow that did it, but all that had gone before. This work that we're doing in education is hard, it is challenging, and we offered you a lot of, simple strategies to engage in that hard work. We also recognize that these strategies are not easy to implement. They can take time. It's why, we're really celebrating when you say, I'll take one or two of these back. And that's ultimately what we want out of this. So just remember that as you are engaging with that stone, as you're pounding that stone, to know that this work is incredibly important, not only for our students, but also for us individually.
Awesome. What a great way to wrap it up with Stonecutters Credo. Before you all jump off, I do want to make sure that we call attention to some of the really great things coming up at Character Strong. One of them is our Character Strong Tier 2 certification training. We have a new Character Strong Tier 2 curriculum. If you want to become a Tier 2 certified school or certified educator, come to this training and learn exactly what it should look like, how it's going to be the most effective, and learn how to do that. That's going to be in late July in Seattle. It's actually right before our national conference. And so our national conference is in Tacoma, Washington, July 28th through 29th. It is going to be really awesome. We have over 25 breakout sessions. We've already booked two of our amazing keynote speakers, Dr. Jamil Zaki, who's the director of Stanford Neuroscience Lab and author of the amazing book, The War for Kindness. And then Adoris Vitak, who is a speaker and student advocate. She famously did the TED Talk, What Adults Can Learn from Kids. So early bird registration is open, so get in. And then if you are like, I also want to see you and AJ more of the staff virtually, here's some other things you can do. We have a secondary demo coming up on Thursday, along with a great webinar called How to Create a Strong Tier 1 Foundation. And then next week, you can come hang out with me again for the professional development demo, and then some gym and elementary demos as well. We will stay on with some questions if you have them for the next couple minutes. But thank you so much gratitude for you being here today. We know that it's a busy time of year, it's a busy schedule. And so we're so happy that over 100 people joined us. And AJ, I'll let you kind of do final reflections as we say goodbye.
Yeah, thank you for that, Meredith. Really, it was a pleasure hearing from you all. Engagement in the chat, we definitely appreciate that. And yeah, as you exit and close out, do some good things today. We appreciate you.
Do some good things today. What a great way to go out, play some music out. We'll close out the webinar in a couple minutes. If someone has any questions, we're happy to do our best to answer them as well. See if we can get some more exciting music.
little change on the radio there, huh?
I know. It's like, okay, we're gonna go take a nap now. Is what happened on my Spotify playlist. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. That was great.